if you look at the Midwest, 70, 65, 75, 71, anywhere through there, that's a lot of traffic and a lot of flow from the south coming up and from the north going down. It's going to make an impact.
It is. And, so because I love to talk about the bottlenecks, ATRI's annual analysis, another annual analysis we do, uses our massive data set of truck GPS data. We have hundreds of thousands of freight truck worth of GPS data that comes into us in real time, with which we can do a whole host of analyses. And probably the best known research product of that GPS data is our bottleneck analysis. We've been doing this one for a number of years. And so we look at two metrics. We take a full calendar year's worth of data and we look at how slowly trucks are operating. So, what are the truck speeds at each location? And how many trucks are impacted. So, speed and volume go into a calculation to come up with the 100 worst places to operate. Not that far from you, you mentioned 75 is the Brent Spence Bridge. It's number 9 on this year's list of the top 100 truck bottlenecks across
So
the whole
it cracked the
US.
top 10.
It did. It did. The last time it cracked the top 10 was when there was that bridge fire,
Yeah.
and it got the capacity got greatly reduced while they made those repairs. I was just talking to a driver yesterday about, I guess there's more repairs coming to the Brent Spence Bridge, so that's going to add additional congestion to that location. So we might see it climb up higher than 9 in the annual list. It's just, and then of course the impacts from shutting down 65 for a time period while they make those repairs. And you're right, the freight's got to go. So trucks are going to have to reroute somewhere. So, oftentimes we see impacts at one bottleneck when they do the construction drive up the congestion numbers at a nearby or adjacent bottleneck.
Yeah, Joe, what are you thinking here? Because if they're going to do repairs on 65 and shut some areas down there and slow that down, and they also shut down the bridge on 75, a large percentage of that traffic's going straight from Cincinnati through Louisville and then down 65.
Again, I'm not familiar in that area as I am in others, but I just want to point out that I live in the Chicago area, and we're number one in the bottleneck. We kicked Fort Lee out of the top spot, so I'm very proud of that.
That's something. Wow.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Man, I'm from New Jersey. I live in Illinois, so
You
I
moved
love
from one
traffic.
bottleneck to another.
Yeah. Hey, Rebecca, I did have a question on your team, your research team. I've always been interested in what are their backgrounds? Are they mathematicians? Are they computer scientists? Do they have industry experience? It's kind of because you put out so much good data. I was just kind of curious what their backgrounds are.
So, Joe, it's a great question, and I love to describe us as a lean, mean research machine. So, we're not a big enough staff to be able to have, for instance, someone who just focuses on one area. So, every time I look for someone, I look for someone who is a research generalist, who understands developing a research methodology. Obviously, we have to have people who are deep into statistics. I am not one of those people, but
Right.
we have to have that. So, we have some folks we have a gentleman who has a master's degree in public policy. We have another who has a master's degree in working with our GPS data. It's not a GPS master's, it's a GIS, but he does a lot of mapping of all
Right.
our data and is able to plot that out. We have industrial science, we have English majors like me. It really is across the board in terms of their background, but the commonality they all share is they understand research and how to design an objective research analysis that gets at the industry's most critical issues.
Yeah, another question I had was, and I know when you survey drivers, you separate some of your reports, you separate owner operators, contractors from company drivers. I was just curious on the company side, do you do any more subcategories like private fleet drivers, tank car drivers, tank truck drivers, dry van guys? Do you get into the weeds like that?
We have, a lot of it just depends on what the study's aim is to do. So
Okay.
in the top industry issues annual survey, another annual survey we do, we just break it out by company drivers and owner operators. Well, first of all, we do an analysis that looks at all truck drivers and what they think
Right.
top issues are. But then we do break it down between independent or owner operators and company drivers, and there's some differences there.
Sure.
But there are other analyses. We did one a number of years ago looking at the independent contractor model. Really, what drives someone to take that path versus someone who chooses to be a company driver. And in that, we did do a little bit of a deeper dive into different sectors of the industry because there are some different models there as
Right.
well.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
And this is probably a great time for me to point out for folks who aren't familiar with ATRI that all these studies we're discussing and our entire research portfolio is available at no cost on our website. So truckingresearch.org, it's easy to remember because it's what we do. You'll find our entire portfolio there where you can download whatever study is of interest to you.
What scares you, Rebecca? Because you're pretty bright. You've been doing this for 33 years. What scares you going into the rest of this year from your side, from what you see and what you're talking to everyone about? What scares you?
Yeah, I think if the war's impact on fuel prices goes on longer term, if it's not this short in and out, I think that's going to be a very significant impact on the industry.
Okay.
We talked about the closures we've seen over the past few years, oftentimes attributed to either insurance costs. In some cases, it's the result of a nuclear verdict that's been handed down that the fleet and their insurers just can't withstand anymore. But given what we've seen in the operational costs and given the profit margins in the negative numbers, uh, a big and continued spike in fuel. A short-term spike in fuel, folks can hopefully weather, but a continued high fuel prices, I think, is going to be very challenging for this industry, and that scares me.
It's funny you mentioned that because we had Dan North on. He's chief economist for North America for Allianz Trade. So I get two. I have Bob Costello, which gives us the trucking view right here, right? And then I get from Dan the overall 35,000 foot view of the economy. No matter what, we anticipate that even if it's a short term in and out, maybe a reasonable amount of time here in and out, and the strait opens up, fuel prices coming off never come off like they go up.
Right.
They're always sticky.
Right.
So, Dan saying if it's quick in and out, fuel prices can be down, at a reasonable level by August. To your point, so I think you're saying the same thing. If it continues on all summer, probably not going to see reprieve till the end of the year and make more of an impact, I think, on the overall economy and consumer sentiment.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
horrible for our carriers.
It will be. It will be. And I mean, selfishly, you've heard what the CEOs of the airlines are saying. I mean, this is going to have significant impacts throughout the industry and throughout the economy. As someone who travels around the country to talk about Atri's research, what I'm seeing in airline prices for tickets is incredible. And quite frankly, my choice is if I can, if it's reasonable, do I drive and pay the high prices for gasoline or do I fly and pay the inflated ticket prices? It's just people don't realize till something like this happens how pervasive the price of fuel is across the entirety of their lives.
Oh, I think it is. Joe, is the fuel up in Chicago like
Oh,
everywhere else?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's out of control. Hey, I had a question regarding fuel, Rebecca. I know a lot of shippers, I'll take my example when I worked for Nestle. We hedged a lot of commodities, cocoa beans, coffee beans, wheat, corn, etc. Right when I was leaving, they started to hedge uh, home heating oil futures again because they were trying to get a hedge against rising fuel prices. I always, when I was, more active in the industry, I talked to carriers, and very few of them, ever got involved in this hedging. I know, yeah, it's pretty complex, but as you look at the big asset carriers and through your data, do any of them come up with a hedging strategy to protect themselves or fuel? Is that one of the data points that you may see?
It's not one that we track, but certainly those who have, more sophisticated systems and are able to really do that calculus
Right,
are able to do so. But when you think about the trucking industry more broadly and the high percentage of carriers that are 10 or fewer trucks,
right,
these are fleets that simply don't have the capacity to do that.
right,
It's basically the CEO is the safety director and the dispatcher and the sales guy. So
right,
it's
right.
very, very again, any sort of uptick in any one of these line items really has an exponential impact on most fleets in the country.
I know that the more difficult the industry is to be successful in, and the more tumultuous it is, the more important the data is. And if you understand our industry, and you understand the value, because everybody in our industry talks, right? Everybody talks to each other, but they don't have the deep, meaningful conversations at times about operating costs and what they're doing, et cetera. They're not helping each other. You are an outlet where they can really see where they benchmark across everyone in the industry, peer to peer,
Right.
and there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is where you are. These are real numbers, and this is where you could focus, and this is where you're out of alignment. And here's where you could, tighten things up. Um, I think it's just a wonderful thing. You guys, what you do is wonderful. Your staff is terrific. But I'm a big fan of yours, Rebecca.
Well, thank you,
And
John.
well, it's pretty easy. You're a sweet soul. So we're thankful for you, and we'd love to have you on again in the future. Definitely try and look and see how we do going through the summer, the impact on fuel. Maybe we talk again around August.
Sounds great. I'd love that.
All right. Until next time, stay in your lane. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for Triple T Transport supporting the podcast.